A stray dog's daring dash through Willowbrook's roaring traffic saves a baby, igniting a heart-pounding citywide quest. Welcome to Pause Verve. Like and share this video with those who need love. The city of Willowbrook thrummed with a vibrant, restless energy that seemed to ripple through the cracked asphalt of Broad Avenue, where cars jostled in a relentless dance of metal and exhaust fumes. It was a crisp autumn morning, the sun hanging high in a sky streaked with wispy clouds, its golden light spilling across the bustling sidewalks, where pedestrians moved like currents in a river, their steps quick and purposeful. Faces were buried in glowing phone screens, or lost in the haze of morning thoughts, each person a thread in the city's chaotic tapestry. Street vendors called out their voices, sharp and rhythmic, hawking steaming pretzels, glistening with salt, and cups of spiced coffee that sent curls of steam into the cool air. The sharp blare of a taxi horn sliced through the din, followed by the low rumble of a bus, and the chatter of passers-by creating a symphony that was Willowbrook's heartbeat, both jarring and alive. Broad Avenue was the city's pulsing core, a place where ambition and impatience collided. Yet beneath its surface noise, there lingered a quiet promise of connection, a spark of warmth waiting to be kindled in the hurried steps of strangers. Among the throng was Sarah Mitchell, a 25-year-old mother navigating the crowded sidewalk with a stroller that cradled her 6-month-old daughter Lily, whose tiny hands gripped a teddy bear rattle with fierce determination. Sarah's chestnut hair was swept into a loose ponytail strands, escaping to frame her face, and her hazel eyes held the soft weariness of sleepless nights, tempered by a radiant warmth that surfaced whenever she glanced at Lily. Her smile was gentle, a quiet anchor in the storm of the avenue, and she hummed a lullaby under her breath, its melody swallowed by the city's clamor but alive in the space between her and her daughter. The stroller's wheels clicked rhythmically against the uneven pavement, a faint counterpoint to the street's cacophony, and Sarah's mind wandered to the day's errands, a grocery list tucked in her pocket, a pharmacy stop for Lily's vitamins, the small tasks that grounded her in the whirlwind of motherhood. She moved with the flow of the avenue, her steps steady, yet lightened by Lily's gurgles, which seemed to soften the edges of Willowbrook's relentless energy. The street was a living mosaic, vendors shouting deals, their carts draped in bright cloths, cyclists weaving through traffic with daring precision, pedestrians darting across crosswalks, their bags swinging. A barista waved from a corner cafe, her grin a fleeting gift, and Sarah returned it, feeling a flicker of belonging in the city's rush. Lily waved her rattle, its soft jingle, a tiny act of defiance against the noise, and Sarah laughed, adjusting the knitted blanket over her daughter's lap, her heart swelling at the sight of those bright, curious eyes. Willowbrook was a place of stark contrasts, where the grind of urban life met the possibility of something extraordinary, a city that could feel both unforgiving and generous in the same breath. The avenue's energy was a blend of chaos and beauty, its motion a reminder that every hurried stranger carried a story waiting to intertwine with another. Sarah paused at a crosswalk, her gaze catching the swirl of leaves skittering across the pavement, a small autumn dance that made her smile. The streetlight glowed red, casting a warm hue over the intersection, and she glanced down at Lily, who babbled at the rattle, her tiny world untouched by the city's haste. Around them, the avenue pulsed, vendors bartering with early shoppers, a cyclist shouting as he swerved past a slow van, a group of teens laughing over their phones, their voices bright against the hum of traffic. The air carried the scent of roasted chestnuts from a nearby cart, mingling with the faint tang of exhaust, and Sarah breathed it in, feeling the city's rhythm settle into her bones. She adjusted her scarf against the morning chill, her fingers brushing the soft wool, and thought of the cozy apartment waiting at the end of the day, a haven for her and Lily. The crowd surged as the light changed green, and Sarah pushed the stroller forward, her steps blending into the stream of motion, unaware of the watchful eyes in a nearby alley, a pair of keen blue eyes that belonged to a scruffy stray named Scout, whose quiet presence would soon weave her story into the heart of Willowbrook. The alley was a shadowed sliver between towering buildings, its walls streaked with graffiti and littered with crumpled papers, yet it held a stillness that contrasted the avenue's roar. Scout crouched beside a rusted dumpster, his black and white coat blending into the dim light, his gaze sharp and alert as he scanned the bustling street. His slight limp, a remnant of a long-ago mishap, ached faintly, but his spirit was unbroken, a gentle spark that had survived the city's indifference. The scent of Sarah's lavender-scented baby blanket drifted to him, faint but distinct, and his ears twitched, his instincts humming with a purpose he couldn't yet name. Willowbrook's chaos swirled around him, horns blaring, vendors shouting, the clatter of a dropped coffee cup. But Scout's focus was singular, locked on the stroller, as it rolled closer to the crosswalk. The city was a storm of sound and motion, its energy both beautiful and overwhelming. Yet in that fleeting moment it felt poised for something extraordinary, a single act that would ripple beyond the crowded corners of Broad Avenue. Sarah's hum grew softer as she neared the intersection, her mind on the tasks ahead, her heart tethered to Lily's tiny hand waving the rattle. The streetlight flickered, casting a green glow, and she stepped forward, oblivious to the loose brake on the stroller, a small detail that would soon set the stage for a moment of courage. Willowbrook moved on, its people caught in their own orbits, but the air seemed to thicken with the weight of a story about to unfold, a story that would remind them of the kindness and bravery hiding in plain sight. In the shadowed alley off Broad Avenue, Scout crouched low beside a rusted dumpster, his black and white coat blending seamlessly with the dim light, his keen blue eyes scanning the chaotic pulse of Willowbrook's morning rush. The city's clamor horns, blaring vendors, shouting cyclists weaving through traffic, washed over him like a familiar tide, but his ears twitched at every sound, his instincts honed by years of survival. His fur was matted, streaked with the grime of alleyways, and his slight limp, a faint ache in his hind leg, spoke of a long-ago encounter with a careless delivery bike that had left him battered but unbroken. Scout was no one's dog, abandoned 3 years prior, when his family loaded their belongings into a dented van and drove away from a gas station on Willowbrook's outskirts, leaving him with nothing but the echo of a child's laughter and the sting of betrayal. The memory lingered like a bruise, but Scout had adapted his cunning and caution, forging a life among the city's shadows. He knew which bakeries tossed out day-old bagels at dawn, which corners held the scent of danger when the streetlights dimmed, and where to curl up when the autumn chill seeped into his bones. Yet beneath his wary exterior, there burned a gentle spark, a flicker of loyalty that hadn't faded despite the city's indifference. His nose twitched, catching the faint scent of lavender from Sarah's stroller as it paused at the crosswalk, Lily's teddy bear rattle jingling softly in the morning air. Scout's head tilted, his gaze sharpening, as he watched Sarah adjust the blanket over her daughter, her distracted hum blending into the din of Broad Avenue. The stroller stood still for a moment, its brake loose, though Sarah didn't notice her, attention caught by a buzzing phone in her pocket. Scout's muscles tensed, his body low to the ground, his instincts stirring as a delivery van rumbled nearby, its tires hissing against the asphalt. He'd seen the street's dangers countless times, bicycles darting through gaps, taxis cutting corners, pedestrians stepping into crosswalks with their eyes elsewhere, and something about the stroller's slight tilt set his heart racing. Scout's life was solitary but not without purpose. He'd once guided a lost child back to a frantic parent near the park, his bark sharp and insistent, and chased off a crow that pecked too close to a sleeping street vendor. These acts went unnoticed by Willowbrook's masses, but they tethered him to a quiet sense of duty, a need to protect that pulsed beneath his scruffy exterior. Now, as Sarah scrolled through her phone, her thumb flicking across the screen, Lily's rattle slipped, rolling a few inches toward the curb, and Scout's ears flattened, his breath quickening. The city roared around him, a vendor's shout cutting through the hum of a slowing bus, the air thick with the scent of roasted chestnuts and exhaust. But Scout's focus was unwavering, locked on the stroller as it edged closer to the street's flow. Sarah laughed softly at a message, unaware of the danger lurking in the tide of traffic, and Scout's instinct screamed a silent alarm that something was wrong. He didn't know why he cared. The baby wasn't his to protect, yet the sight of Lily's tiny hand waving her rattle sparked a memory of a child who once hugged him tight before the van's taillights faded into the dusk. The streetlight flickered, casting a red glow over the intersection, and Sarah stepped forward, her stroller rolling too close to the curb where traffic surged like a river. Scout's heart pounded, his scruffy tail still, as he watched his body poised to move, though he didn't yet know why. The city's pulse was deafening horns blending with the chatter of pedestrians, the clatter of a dropped coffee cup. But in that fleeting moment, Scout's quiet presence felt like a beacon, a stray dog unseen by the world, but ready to change its course. The alley was his refuge, a narrow sliver of calm amidst Willowbrook's storm, its walls streaked with faded graffiti, its air heavy with the damp scent of yesterday's rain. He nibbled on a crust of bread scavenged from behind a bakery, his teeth working slowly, as his eyes flicked toward the street where Sarah's stroller paused. The scent of lavender lingered, mingling with the faint sweetness of Lily's milk, and Scout's nose twitched, his instincts humming like a quiet current. He'd learned to read the city's rhythms the way a sailor reads the sea, knowing when to hide, when to move, when to trust the rare kindness of a stranger. A vendor across the street tossed a scrap to a pigeon, and Scout's gaze followed the motion, his body still but alert. The crowd surged as the light-changed green pedestrians spilling into the crosswalk, their bags swinging, their voices a low hum, and Sarah pushed the stroller forward, her steps blending into the stream. Scout's ears twitched at the sound of a cyclist's bell, sharp and urgent, and his muscles coiled, his body ready to spring, though he remained hidden in the alley's shadows. Willowbrook was a place of sharp contrasts, where the warmth of a barista's wave could pierce the cold rush of morning traffic, where a stray like Scout could be both invisible and essential. The avenue's chaos swirled around him, but Scout's world was one of quiet observation. His blue eyes catching details, the crowd missed the stroller's tilt, the van's speed, the subtle shift in the air that whispered of danger. Sarah's hum grew softer as she neared the intersection, her mind on the grocery list, the pharmacy stop, the small tasks that filled her day. Lily babbled, her rattle waving like a tiny flag, and Scout's gaze softened for a moment, a flicker of something like longing crossing his weary heart. The city moved on, its people caught in their own orbits, but the air seemed to thicken with the weight of a moment, about to unfold, a moment that would hinge on the courage of a stray who'd learned to survive, but never forgotten how to care. The air on Broad Avenue thickened, with the weight of an ordinary moment poised to shatter, as Sarah Mitchell pushed Lily's stroller toward the crosswalk, her hazel eyes flicking to the buzzing phone in her hand. Willowbrook's morning rush surged. Around her, the clamor of horns, vendors' shouts, and the low rumble of traffic blending into a chaotic hum that drowned out her soft lullaby. The streetlight glowed red, casting a warm hue over the intersection, and Sarah paused, her thumb scrolling through a message from her sister, her mind half on the grocery list tucked in her pocket. Lily gurgled in the stroller, her tiny fingers waving. The teddy bear rattled, its faint jingle lost in the city's din, but bright in her small world. The stroller's brake, loose though Sarah didn't notice, gave way under the gentle slope of the sidewalk, and the wheels began to roll, tilting toward the curb where traffic flowed like a relentless river. A delivery van roared closer, its driver distracted by a late schedule, his eyes on a clipboard instead of the road. The van's tires hissed against the asphalt, its bulk casting a shadow that crept toward the crosswalk, and the air seemed to hum, with a tension the crowd couldn't yet see. In the shadowed alley, Scout crouched, his black and white coat blending with the dim light, his blue eyes wide and locked on the stroller as it veered into the street's path. His ears flattened, his scruffy body coiled like a spring, his instincts screaming louder than the horns and shouts around him. The scent of lavender from Lily's blanket mingled with the acrid tang of exhaust, and Scout's nose twitched, his heart racing as he sensed the danger Sarah couldn't see. The city's noise swallowed her hum, but Scout's world was one of sharp clarity, his focus singular, his muscles tensing as the stroller rolled closer to the curb. A cyclist swerved nearby, his bell ringing sharply, and a pedestrian cursed, stepping back from the crosswalk, but Sarah's attention remained on her phone, her steps frozen for a fraction of a second. The van's engine growled, its bumper gleaming in the morning sun, and time seemed to slow, the world holding its breath as the stroller's wheels crossed the curb's edge. Scout's limp ached faintly, but it didn't slow him, his instincts overriding the pain as he prepared to move, his gaze never leaving Lily's tiny form. The crowd surged around the intersection, pedestrians darting forward. As the light flickered green, their bags swinging, their voices a low hum, but the danger loomed unseen, a collision of metal and fragility that hung in the balance. Sarah laughed softly at her sister's text, unaware that Lily's rattle had slipped again, rolling inches closer to the street, and Scout's ears twitched, his breath quickening as the van's shadow loomed larger. The city was a storm of motion vendors shouting deals, a barista wiping down a counter, a group of teens snapping photos across the street, but Scout's alley was a pocket of stillness, his blue eyes catching the subtle tilt of the stroller. The van's reckless speed, the moment teetering on disaster. Sarah's scarf fluttered in the autumn breeze, her fingers brushing the wool as she glanced up, her hum faltering for a moment, but not enough to notice the stroller's drift. Lily babbled, her tiny hand waving the rattle like a flag, and Scout's heart pounded, a memory of a child's hug flickering in his mind, urging him to act. The streetlight glowed green now, and Sarah stepped forward, her stroller rolling too close. To the traffic's edge, her mind still half on her phone. The van's horn blared a late warning, its driver finally glancing up, but it was too close, the tires screeching as the vehicle barreled toward the crosswalk. Scout's muscles coiled tighter, his scruffy tail still, his body poised to leap from the alley's shadows, though he didn't yet know how he'd reach the stroller in time. The city's pulse was deafening, the clatter of a dropped coffee cup, the shout of a vendor, the laughter of teens, but Scout's focus was a laser cutting through the chaos, his instincts humming with a purpose that felt larger than himself. The alley's damp air clung to his fur, the scent of yesterday's rain mixing with the lavender from Lily's blanket, and Scout's nose twitched, his senses alive with the weight of the moment. He'd seen the street's dangers before, a cyclist nearly hitting a child, a taxi clipping a cart, and he knew the cost of hesitation. The crowd moved on, oblivious pedestrians stepping into the crosswalk, their eyes elsewhere, and Sarah's steps carried her forward, her stroller now inches from the street's flow. The van's shadow swallowed the curb, its engine a low growl that vibrated through the pavement, and Scout's ears flattened, his body trembling with the urge to act. Sarah's hum returned softer now, her eyes still on her phone, and Lily's rattle waved a tiny beacon in the morning light. The city's chaos swirled, a vendor tossing a scrap to a pigeon, a cyclist weaving through a gap, the barista's wave from the cafe. But Scout's world was narrowing to the stroller, the van, the ticking, seconds that separated safety from tragedy. His limp, a faint echo of past pain, didn't slow him, his heart pounding with a loyalty that had survived abandonment, a need to protect that burned brighter than fear. The streetlight's green glow bathed the intersection, and Sarah pushed the stroller forward, her steps blending into the crowd's rhythm, unaware of the loose brake, the van's speed, the moment about to unravel. Scout's blue eyes flashed in the alley's dim light, his body low, his instincts screaming that this was the moment the city's heart would pause, and Willowbrook would never be the same. The world on Broad Avenue seemed to freeze as the delivery. A van roared toward the crosswalk, its gleaming bumper casting a shadow over Lily's stroller, which rolled unchecked into the street's relentless flow. Sarah Mitchell's fingers hovered over her phone, her hazel eyes still caught on a message, her hum fading, as the stroller's loose brake gave way entirely, its wheels crossing the curb's edge. Lily gurgled, unaware, her teddy bear rattle waving. Like a tiny flag, her small world bright against the looming danger. The van's tires hissed, its driver fumbling with a clipboard, his gaze snapping up too late to stop the vehicle's momentum. Horns blared, a cyclist swerved cursing, and pedestrians scattered their bags swinging, but the chaos of Willowbrook's morning rush couldn't mask the weight of the moment, a heartbeat where disaster hung in the balance. In the shadowed alley, Scout's blue eyes burned with focus, his black and white coat a blur as he launched from his crouch, his scruffy form darting into the street with a speed that defied his limp. His barks, sharp and urgent, cut through the din, slicing past the vendors' shouts and the low rumble of traffic. His heart pounded, his instincts screaming louder than the city's noise, his body low to the ground as he weaved through the legs of startled pedestrians. Sarah's head snapped up, her phone slipping from her fingers, clattering to the pavement as she saw the stroller rolling into the intersection, her scream catching in her throat, her legs frozen for a fraction of a second. The van's horn blared its brakes, squealing a desperate wail, but it was too close, its shadow swallowing the stroller's frame. Scout reached the stroller in a heartbeat, his muzzle nudging its side with frantic force, his paws scrambling against the asphalt as he pushed it back toward the sidewalk. The van's bumper missed them by inches, its wind ruffling Scout's fur and Lily's blanket as the stroller rocked to a stop on the curb. Sarah lunged forward, her sobs breaking free, as she scooped Lily into her arms, clutching her daughter, her heart hammering with terror and relief. Scout stood panting, his tail low, his blue eyes scanning the street, as if ensuring the danger had passed his scruffy body, trembling from the effort. A bystander, a young woman with a backpack, fumbled with her phone, her hands shaky as she captured the scene, the grainy video freezing Scout's heroic dash in digital memory. The crowd murmured, some rushing to Sarah, others staring at the scruffy dog, who seemed to vanish as quickly as he'd appeared, his form slipping toward the alley's edge. Sarah's tears fell onto Lily's cheek as she whispered thanks to the air, her gaze searching for the dog who'd saved her world. The street's chaos resumed, horns, honking, pedestrians moving on, but the moment lingered heavy with awe, its weight settling into the bones of Willowbrook's restless heart. Scout's barks echoed faintly as he retreated into the alley, his heart still racing, his limp throbbing, but his mind calm, knowing the baby was safe. The bystander's video began to spread, shared from phone to phone, its frames carrying the story of a stray who'd defied the city's indifference. Sarah held Lily tighter, her gratitude a quiet vow to find the dog who'd given her everything. And as the streetlight changed, casting a green glow over Broad Avenue, the ripple of Scout's courage began to stir something deeper in Willowbrook's pulse. The city's noise roared back to life, vendors shouting deals, a barista wiping down a counter, teens laughing over their phones. But Sarah's world had shifted, its colors sharper, its sounds softer, as she rocked Lily on the curb. Her hands trembled as she brushed a curl from her daughter's forehead, her mind replaying the stroller's tilt, the van's screech, Scout's desperate dash across the asphalt. The crowd buzzed around her, some offering water, others murmuring words of comfort. But Sarah's eyes scanned the alley where Scout had vanished, her chest aching with a mix of gratitude and guilt for the moment of distraction that nearly cost her everything. The bystander's video looped on her phone, the footage drawing gasps from onlookers, as Scout's blue eyes flashed, his body low and determined. A vendor paused his cart, watching the clip, his weathered face softening at the sight of the strays. Bravery. The street was a river of motion, cyclists weaving through gaps, a bus rumbling past, but Scout's act had carved a stillness into the chaos, a moment that felt like a gift to a city too busy to notice. Sarah stood, her legs shaky as she cradled Lily, her resolve hardening to find the dog who'd changed her life. The alley was dim, its walls streaked with graffiti, its air heavy with the scent of damp pavement. But Scout was gone, his presence a whisper that lingered in the shadows. The video's reach grew, hashtags like Hero Dog and Willowbrook Miracle sparking online as strangers shared the clip, their comments a mix of awe and wonder. Sarah's gratitude mingled with a pang of sorrow for the stray who'd given so much and asked for nothing, her heart tethered to the memory of those blue eyes. The city's rhythm pulsed on vendors, bartering pedestrians darting across the street, but the air carried a new warmth, a sense that Scout's courage had cracked open something kind in Willowbrook's heart. Sarah adjusted Lily's blanket, her fingers brushing the soft fabric, and felt a spark of hope that she'd see Scout again, her vow to thank him, a quiet promise that echoed in the hum of Broad Avenue. Sarah Mitchell sat trembling on the curb of Broad Avenue, her arms wrapped tightly around Lily, as Willowbrook's relentless noise roared back to life around her, the horns and shouts blending into a familiar hum that felt distant, now almost muted. Her hazel eyes were red with tears, her chestnut ponytail loose as she rocked her 6-month-old daughter, whose tiny fingers still clutched the teddy bear rattle, unaware of the danger that had passed. The stroller stood crooked beside her, its loose break a silent reminder of the moment that nearly shattered her world, and Sarah's heart pounded with a mix of terror and gratitude, her mind replaying the screech of the van's tires, the blur of Scout's black and white coat, his desperate nudge that saved Lily. She brushed a curl from Lily's forehead, her fingers shaking as she whispered words of love, her voice thick with emotion that spilled over into quiet sobs. The crowd buzzed around her, some pedestrians pausing to offer water or kind words, others hurrying past, their eyes on their phones. But Sarah's gaze drifted to the shadowed alley where Scout had vanished, his scruffy form, a fleeting hero who'd slipped back into Willowbrook's margins. Her chest ached with a gratitude so deep, it felt like a vow, a need to find the stray who'd given her everything, and ask for nothing in return. The bystander's video looped on her phone, its grainy frames drawing gasps from a small knot of onlookers, their voices soft with awe, as Scout's blue eyes flashed his body low and determined in his dash across the asphalt. The young woman who'd filmed a college student with a backpack shared the clip online, her fingers trembling as she typed a caption that called "Scout a Miracle," and within minutes the video began to spread, likes and comments piling up as Willowbrook's residents caught wind of the story. A vendor across the street, his cart steaming with pretzels, paused to watch the footage, his weathered face softening as he muttered about guardian angels. Sarah felt the city's pulse shift, its usual indifference giving way to a shared sense of wonder as strangers glanced at her, their eyes warm with curiosity and concern. She stood, her legs unsteady, and walked toward the alley, her steps tentative as if afraid to scare Scout away, but the shadows were empty, save for a crumpled newspaper and the faint scent of damp fur. Her heart sank, but her resolve hardened her gratitude, mingling with a pang of guilt for the moment of distraction that had set the stage for Scout's heroism. The street's chaos resumed, cyclists weaving through traffic, a barista waving from the cafe, but the moment lingered like a warm ember in Willowbrook's cold urban heart. Across the street, Clara, a stout diner owner with graying curls and a laugh like a bell, leaned against her counter, showing the video to a regular, her eyes bright with recognition. She'd tossed scraps to a scruffy dog like Scout before, never thinking much of it, but now she wondered if that limping stray was the same one who'd saved a baby. Her diner, 2 blocks from the crosswalk, was a cozy hub where locals swapped stories over pancakes and coffee, and Clara felt a spark of pride that her city had birthed such a tale. She taped a printed screenshot of Scout's dash to her counter, a makeshift tribute that drew nods from patrons who'd seen the clip online. The video's reach grew, hashtags like Willowbrook Miracle and Hero Dog trending as strangers debated whether Scout was a stray or a lost pet, their comments weaving a tapestry of awe that stretched beyond Broad Avenue. Sarah returned to the curb, cradling Lily, her eyes scanning the crowd for a glimpse of black and white fur, her mind racing with ways to find Scout. A man in a worn jacket offered her a bottle of water, his voice gruff but kind, and Sarah nodded. Her thanks, her thoughts on the dog who'd changed her life in a heartbeat. The city's rhythm pulsed on vendors, shouting deals, a bus rumbling past, but Sarah felt a stillness settle into her bones, a clarity that came from staring into the fragility of her world and finding it whole again. She thought of her own struggles, the long nights alone with Lily, the weight of motherhood in a city that often felt too big, and saw Scout's act as a reminder that kindness could bloom in the most unexpected places. The bystander's video played, on a loop in her mind, Scout's blue eyes sharp with purpose, his limp barely slowing him, and Sarah felt a pang of wonder at the instinct that drove him. She didn't know how a stray could sense danger before the crowd, but she felt the truth of it, her gratitude a quiet prayer that she'd see him again. The streetlight flickered, casting a green glow over the intersection, and Sarah stood, her scarf fluttering in the autumn breeze, her resolve to find Scout a beacon in her heart. Clara watched from her diner, her hands dusted with flour as she served a plate of biscuits, her thoughts on the scruffy dog she'd fed behind her dumpster. She felt a pull to do more, to join the search that was already stirring online, and her diner became a hub for murmurs of Scout's story patrons, swapping theories over coffee, their voices warm with possibility. The city's noise horns, vendors, teens laughing, felt softer now, as if Scout's courage had tuned Willowbrook to a gentler frequency. Sarah adjusted Lily's blanket, her fingers brushing the soft fabric, and felt a spark of hope that the city would rally around Scout the way he'd rallied for her daughter. The alley remained empty, but its shadows held a promise, a whisper, that Scout was still out there, his heroism, a spark that had already begun to light Willowbrook's restless heart. Willowbrook woke to a story that felt like a warm ember in its bustling urban heart as the video of Scout's heroic rescue spread like wildfire across phones and screens, transforming the stray dog into a symbol of hope. Sarah Mitchell sat at her small kitchen table, the morning light filtering through a cracked window, her coffee growing cold as she scrolled through comments online, each one a testament to Scout's courage. Strangers called him a hero, a guardian. Angel, their words weaving a tapestry of awe that stretched beyond the crowded corners of Broad Avenue, her hazel eyes bright with a mix of gratitude and determination. Lily slept in her crib nearby, her teddy bear rattle tucked beside her, and Sarah's heart swelled at the thought of the scruffy dog who'd saved her daughter, his blue eyes sharp in her memory. The city's pulse seemed to shift its usual rush, of horns and hurried steps softened by a shared sense of wonder, as neighbors paused to talk, their voices warm with excitement. At Clara's diner, 2 blocks from the rescue, the morning crowd buzzed louder than usual, regulars huddled over pancakes, their phones glowing with the viral video as they debated Scout's origins with the fervor of a town meeting. Clara, her graying, curls bouncing as she poured coffee, leaned over the counter, her laugh like a bell as she shared her own story of feeding a limping stray behind her dumpster, never imagining he could be the same dog who'd darted through traffic. Her diner, a cozy haven of checkered tablecloths and jukebox tunes, became a hub for Scout's tail patrons, swapping theories, some swearing they'd seen him scavenging near the park, others insisting he was a ghost dog sent by fate. Across town, Mark, a journalist with a sharp tongue and a column in the Willowbrook Times, sat in his cluttered office, his creaky chair tilting back as he squinted at the footage, his usual cynicism faltering at the sight of Scout's desperate dash. He muttered about clickbait, his fingers hovering over his keyboard, but couldn't shake the story's pull, jotting notes for an article he hadn't planned to write, his skepticism softening with each replay of the grainy clip. On Broad Avenue, vendors and shopkeepers joined the chatter, their voices carrying over steaming carts as they shared sightings of a black and white stray, some claiming he'd snatched a crust from their trash, others recalling his wary blue eyes watching from an alley. The city's rhythm felt different now, its indifference giving way to a collective curiosity that bound strangers in a shared mission to understand the dog who'd changed their morning. Sarah felt it too, as she pushed Lily's stroller to the park, her eyes scanning every shadow for a glimpse of scruffy fur, her heart buoyed by the online comments that poured in with tips and praise. She posted a plea on social media, her words raw with gratitude, asking for help to find Scout, and within hours replies flooded her inbox, sightings near the river, a blur of fur by the bakery, though none led to him yet. The hashtags Willowbrook Miracle and Hero Dog trended higher each share, amplifying Scout's story as kids in the neighborhood drew pictures of a heroic dog, their crayons turning him into a legend with a wagging tail and shining eyes. Clara taped another screenshot to her counter, this one showing Scout's mid-dash silhouette, her diner's walls becoming a shrine to the stray who'd stirred her city's heart. She set out a bowl of water near her dumpster, a quiet gesture that felt like a prayer, her hands dusted with flour, as she watched the alley for a sign of him. Mark's article took shape, his words softer than usual, as he described a city awakened by a single selfless act, his usual sharp edges dulled by the video's raw power. He interviewed a vendor who'd seen the rescue, his voice thick with awe, and a barista who swore Scout had lingered near her cafe weeks ago, her wave unanswered, but remembered. The city's streets hummed with a new energy, pedestrians pausing to smile at strangers, their conversations laced with hope as they shared the clip, their phones glowing in the autumn light. Sarah walked through the park, her scarf fluttering in, the breeze, her mind on Scout's fleeting presence in the alley, his limp barely slowing him as he vanished. She felt a pang of sorrow for the stray who'd given so much, her resolve to find him growing with every comment she read. A group of teens nearby taped hand-drawn posters to lampposts, their words reading, "Find our hero dog," their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. The park was alive with joggers, dogs chasing balls, kids playing tag. But Sarah's eyes searched the edges where shadows gathered, hoping for a glimpse of black and white fur. Clara's diner stayed busy, regulars lingering longer, their coffee cups refilled as they swapped stories of pets who'd changed their lives, a mutt who'd barked at a fire, a cat who'd nudged a sleeping owner awake. These tales poured out like a quiet tide, each one a thread in the city's growing love for Scout. Mark dug deeper into the story, his journalist's instinct driving him to city records, where he found a faint lead, a microchip registration for a dog matching Scout's description, abandoned years ago. The discovery stirred him, his fingers pausing over his keyboard as he imagined Scout's lonely journey since that betrayal. Sarah's hope grew alongside her gratitude, her evenings now spent answering messages from strangers who saw the video and felt moved to act their words a reminder that Scout's impact was already rippling beyond Willowbrook. The city's skyline glowed under the autumn dusk, its lights a constellation of lives touched by a stray's courage, and Sarah felt a quiet certainty that Scout was out there. His blue eyes watching from the shadows, his heroism a spark that had begun to warm Willowbrook's restless heart. Scout lay low in the quiet shadows of Willowbrook's riverside park, his black and white coat blending with the fallen leaves as the city's hum softened under the weight of late afternoon. His blue eyes flickered with caution, scanning the distant joggers and barking dogs, their silhouettes framed by the golden glow of an autumn sunset. The scent of grilled sausages from a nearby food cart drifted on the breeze, mingling with the damp earth beneath him. But his instincts kept him hidden, his scruffy body curled beneath a rhododendron bush. His slight limp ached faintly, a reminder of the delivery bike that had clipped him years ago. But the pain was just another thread in the tapestry of his survival, woven alongside the sharper sting of abandonment. 3 years prior, a family had packed their van at a gas station on Willowbrook's edge, their laughter fading as they drove away, leaving Scout with the echo of a child's hug and the cold realization that he was no one's dog. The memory lingered, like a scar, but he'd learned to carry it quietly, navigating the city's dangers with a blend of cunning and resilience. He knew the rhythm of Broad Avenue's chaos, the bakery that tossed out stale bread at dawn, the alley corners, to avoid when streetlights dimmed, and yet there was a softness in him, a flicker of loyalty that hadn't been extinguished by Willowbrook's indifference. His nose twitched, catching the faint lavender scent that still clung to his memory from Lily's blanket, a thread that tethered him to the moment he darted through traffic to save her. The city's sudden attention, the buzz of voices, the posters taped to lampposts felt like a spotlight. He didn't trust his instincts, urging him to stay unseen. But Clara's kindness lingered in his mind, the bowl of water she'd left by her diner's dumpster, a rare beacon in his solitary world, and he'd ventured closer to her alley at dusk, his paws silent on the pavement. The warmth of her scraps, the gentle cadence of her voice calling his name, stirred something deep within him, a hesitant trust that battled his wariness. Scout's ears twitched at the sound of kids nearby, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves as they taped another poster to a tree, its crayoned words proclaiming, "Hero Dog." He didn't understand the city's fervor, but he felt its weight, a distant hum that reached him like a lullaby, hinting at a world where he might be seen. Flashbacks of his old life flickered in his mind, a warm bed by a fireplace, a child's hand stroking his fur, the sharp jolt of the van's engine as it pulled away. He'd adapted to Willowbrook's margins, scavenging from overturned bins, dodging speeding bikes. But the ache of abandonment never fully faded, replaced instead by small acts of purpose, nudging a lost toddler toward its mother, chasing a rat from a sleeping vendor's side. These moments went unnoticed by the city's masses, but they anchored Scout to a quiet duty, a need to protect that had surged to life when he saw Lily's stroller roll toward danger. His heart still raced at the memory of the van's screech, his muzzle pushing the stroller, his paws scrambling against asphalt, and though he'd slipped back into the shadows, his mind was calm, knowing the baby was safe. The park was a haven for now, its grassy slopes alive with dogs chasing balls, joggers, panting in rhythm. But Scout stayed hidden, his blue eyes catching the subtle shifts in the air, a cyclist's bell, a vendor's shout. The city's chatter about him, hashtags and shared videos, felt like a foreign language. But Clara's bowl of water, her soft voice carried a warmth he couldn't ignore. He'd crept closer to her diner the previous night, his nose low as he sniffed. The scraps she'd left his tail giving a hesitant wag before he darted back to the park's safety. Willowbrook was a place of stark contrasts, where the roar of traffic could drown out a child's laugh, where a stray like Scout could be both invisible and essential. His world was one of sharp senses, the scent of lavender, the sound of Sarah's hum, the fleeting image of Lily's rattle waving like a tiny flag. He didn't know why he'd cared enough to risk the street's dangers, but the act had felt right, a spark of loyalty that burned brighter than fear. The park's dusk deepened, the sky streaked with pink and gold, and Scout's ears twitched at the distant hum of Broad Avenue, its horns softer now as the city settled. He nibbled on a crust he'd scavenged his teeth, working slowly, his eyes flicking toward the diner's direction, where Clara's kindness waited like an anchor. The city's love for him, posters, voices, online buzz was a mystery, but he sensed its shift, a warmth that reached him in the quiet of the park. His limp eased slightly, perhaps from the regular scraps Clara left, or the spark of trust beginning to flicker in his wary heart. The leaves rustled above him, a gentle wind carrying the scent of roasted chestnuts, and Scout's gaze softened, a memory of a child's hug blending with the image of Lily's tiny hand. He didn't trust the city's attention, his instincts warning him to stay hidden, but the pull of Clara's gentleness, of Sarah's gratitude, felt like a call towards something he'd stopped dreaming of, a place where he might belong. Willowbrook's skyline glowed faintly, its lights a constellation of lives touched by his courage, and Scout curled tighter beneath the bush, his nose tucked under his tail, his heart open to the possibility of a city that might finally see him. Willowbrook's streets pulsed with a quiet determination as the search for Scout grew into a citywide mission, binding strangers in a shared quest to honor the stray who'd saved a life. Sarah Mitchell woke early, her hazel eyes scanning the latest blurry photo of Scout posted online, his blue eyes unmistakable, even in the dim light of an alley near Clara's diner. She bundled Lily into her stroller, the morning air crisp with autumn's bite, and joined a group of volunteers combing the neighborhoods around Broad Avenue, their flyers fluttering on lampposts with Scout's image and the words, "Hero Dog Wanted." Clara's diner hummed as a command center, where volunteers grabbed coffee and swapped leads, Clara herself pinning a map to the wall marking reported sightings with red pins, her graying curls bouncing as she rallied the group, her voice warm with conviction that Scout was close, just waiting for the right moment to be found. Across town, Mark the journalist dug deeper into the story, his sharp instincts leading him to city records, where he uncovered a microchip registration for a dog matching Scout's description, abandoned 3 years ago by a family who'd left Willowbrook without a backward glance. The discovery softened his cynicism, his fingers pausing over his keyboard as he imagined Scout's lonely journey since that betrayal, his usual detachment giving way to a quiet respect for the stray's resilience. Sarah felt the city's energy shift each conversation with a neighbor or shopkeeper laced with hope, and she shared her story of gratitude at the diner, her voice steady as she described the moment Scout saved Lily, her words drawing nods from regulars who'd seen the viral video. The search took her to the park, where kids ran with posters, their laughter mingling with calls of Scout's name, and Sarah's chest tightened with a mix of longing and resolve, her scarf fluttering as she pushed Lily's stroller through the grassy slopes. The park was alive with joggers, dogs chasing balls, families picnicking under the autumn sun, but Sarah's eyes searched the shadows where Scout might hide her heart, tethered to the memory of his blue eyes. Clara took charge, organizing a community effort, with volunteers handing out flyers and checking alleys, her diner, a hub for updates and warm drinks, her laugh like a bell as she encouraged the group to keep looking. She'd seen Scout near her dumpster the previous night, his tail giving a hesitant wag, and her hope surged, her hands dusted with flour as she set out a fresh bowl of water each evening. Mark's latest article hit the presses, detailing Scout's possible past and urging readers to join the search, his words carrying a sincerity that surprised even him, his usual sharp prose softened by the city's growing love for the stray. Social media lit up with new sightings, each one a spark that kept Willowbrook's hope alive, and Sarah felt closer to Scout than ever, her evenings now spent at the local animal shelter, where she'd begun volunteering, her hands busy with feeding bowls and leashes as a way to honor him. The shelter was a bustle of barking dogs and hopeful families, its kennels filled with strays, who reminded Sarah of Scout's resilience, and she learned to walk dogs, clean cages, her heart easing with purpose. A volunteer, an older woman with kind eyes, shared stories of strays who'd found homes, their instincts shining through hardships, and Sarah nodded, feeling a thread of connection to Scout's selfless act. The city streets glowed under the autumn dusk, its people pausing to smile at strangers, their conversations warm with the shared mission to find the dog who'd reminded them of the good in the world. Clara's diner stayed busy, regulars lingering. Over coffee, their phones glowing with the latest posts about Scout, their voices bright with theories about where he might be. A group of teens spotted him near the river, snapping a blurry photo that sparked a flurry of excitement online. Those scouts slipped away before anyone could reach him. Sarah saw the photo, her heart racing, as she recognized his wary stance, and she posted another plea online promising to give Scout the home he deserved. Mark interviewed a vet for his next piece, the expert explaining how dogs like Scout sensed danger through subtle cues. A child's cry, a shift in the air, and Mark typed furiously, his usual skepticism fading as he saw Willowbrook's people come alive with stories of their pets. The city's rhythm felt softer now, its horns and shouts tempered by a warmth that spread from Clara's diner to the park's grassy slopes. Sarah's shelter work brought her closer to Clara, who stopped by with donated blankets, the two women, bonding over coffee, sharing their hopes of finding Scout, their laughter a quiet anchor in the search's intensity. The park's trees rustled in the evening breeze, their leaves a carpet of gold, and Sarah pushed Lily's stroller through the paths, her eyes scanning for a glimpse of black and white fur. The city's love for Scout posters, flyers, hashtags felt like a net cast wide, and Sarah's hope grew with every step, her gratitude for his heroism, a light that guided her through Willowbrook's bustling heart. Clara's map at the diner grew crowded with red pins, each one a story of a sighting, a moment of hope, and the community's effort felt like a promise that Scout would be found, his courage, a spark that had united a city ready to welcome him home. The autumn chill settled over Willowbrook as the search for Scout intensified, the city's collective hope converging on the alleys and parks where his black and white coat might flicker in the dusk. Sarah Mitchell walked through the riverside, Parker scarf wrapped tight against the evening breeze, her hazel eyes scanning the shadows as she pushed Lily's stroller along the winding paths. The park hummed with life, kids chasing each other across the grass, dogs barking as they chased balls, joggers panting in rhythm. But Sarah's focus was singular, her heart tethered to the blurry photo of Scout posted online that morning. His blue eyes catching the light near Clara's diner. She'd spent the day at the animal shelter, her hands busy with feeding strays, her mind on the dog who'd saved her daughter, and now her steps carried a quiet urgency, a vow to find him before the city's attention faded. Clara's diner remained the heart of the search, its checkered tablecloths and jukebox tunes, a backdrop for volunteers who gathered over coffee, their voices buzzing with the latest leads. Clara herself stood by the back door, her graying curls tucked under a scarf, her hands dusted with flour as she set out a plate of warm scraps, her eyes scanning the alley for the scruffy dog she'd come to know as more than a stray. She'd seen him the previous night, his tail giving a hesitant wag as he sniffed her offering, and her heart leapt with the certainty that Scout was close, his trust teetering on the edge of surrender. The city's streets glowed with purpose lampposts, lined with flyers, their words "Hero Dog Wanted" fluttering in the wind, kids taping new posters with crayoned drawings of Scout's blue eyes. Social media buzzed with hashtags Willowbrook Miracle and Hero Dog trending higher, each citing a spark. That kept the city's hope alive. Sarah felt it too. Her evenings now split between shelter work and answering messages from strangers who'd seen the viral video, their words fueling her resolve to bring Scout home. Mark, the journalist, sat at a cafe nearby, his laptop open as he typed his latest piece, his sharp edges softened by the city's love for Scout, his words painting the stray as a symbol of courage that had cracked open Willowbrook's restless heart. He'd uncovered more about Scout's past, a microchip record hinting at a family who'd left him behind, and the discovery stirred him, his cynicism melting into a quiet awe for the dog's resilience. The diner's map was crowded with red pins, each marking a reported sighting, and Clara rallied the volunteers, her laugh like a bell, as she shared the latest, a teen's blurry photo of Scout near the river, his limp barely noticeable in the dim light. Sarah arrived at the diner just after sunset, her cheeks flushed from the park's chill, her hope reignited by Clara's story of Scout's fleeting appearance the previous night. She joined a small group of regulars, their coffee cups steaming as they swapped theories about where Scout might hide, their voices bright with the shared mission to find him. Clara called Sarah to the back, her voice low as she pointed to the alley where Scout had lingered, his blue eyes meeting hers for a moment before he darted away. Sarah's pulse quickened, her fingers brushing Lily's blanket as she stepped outside her eyes, searching the dusk for a glimpse of fur. Clara set out a fresh plate this time with a piece of warm chicken, her movements slow and deliberate, as if coaxing a wary friend. The alley was dim, its walls streaked with graffiti, its air heavy with the scent of damp pavement, but a rustle in the shadows made Sarah's breath catch. Scout crept forward, his paws silent on the pavement, his nose low. As he sniffed the chicken, his instincts torn between caution and the pull of Clara's kindness. His black and white coat blended with the twilight, but his blue eyes glowed faintly, catching the diner's soft light. Clara knelt a few feet away, her voice a gentle murmur, calling his name, and Scout paused, his body tense, but his tail giving a hesitant wag. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as she recognized the dog who'd saved Lily, his scruffy form unmistakable, even in the dim light. She knelt beside Clara, her voice trembling with gratitude, as she whispered thanks, her words spilling out, raw and heartfelt. Scout's ears twitched, his gaze flicking between the women, his trust wavering but held by their quiet presence. A young girl, a volunteer with braided hair, spotted him from the diner's doorway, her shout breaking the stillness, and Scout's heart raced, his paws itching to flee. The crowd stirred, volunteers peering into the alley, their voices soft but eager, and Scout's muscles tensed, his blue eyes wide with alarm. Clara raised a hand signaling for quiet, her voice a soothing hum as she called his name again. But the moment was fragile, the city's love, a weight Scout wasn't ready to carry. He darted back into the shadows, his form a blur, as he slipped between crates, his limp barely slowing him, leaving the crowd buzzing with excitement and disappointment. Sarah's heart sank, but her hope surged, her eyes locked on the spot where Scout had stood, his tail wagging for a fleeting second. Clara stood her, hands on her hips, her laugh soft as she described Scout's cautious trust, his spirit unbroken despite his wariness. Mark arrived, drawn by a volunteer's tip, his notebook forgotten as he watched the scene, his phone snapping a quick photo of the alley's empty shadows, his caption online reading, "Hero dog so close." The diner hummed with renewed energy, volunteers crowding the back door, their cheers soft to avoid startling Scout again. Sarah's tears fell as she looked at Lily sleeping in her stroller, her gratitude for Scout, a fire that burned brighter with each near miss. Willowbrook streets seemed to pulse with relief, the city's love for its hero dog a tangible bond that promised he was closer to being found, his courage a spark that kept the search alive. The soft glow of Willowbrook's dusk settled over Clara's diner, where the scent of fresh coffee and warm biscuits mingled with the quiet anticipation of a city on the verge of finding its hero. Clara stood by the back door, her graying curls tucked under a scarf, her hands dusted with flour, as she set out a plate of warm chicken scraps, her eyes scanning the alley with a patience honed by years of serving strays and strangers alike. The city's search for Scout had grown louder, with flyers on every lamppost and hashtags like Willowbrook Miracle trending across social media. But Clara's approach was different, a steady, gentle beacon that didn't demand or chase. Sarah. Mitchell arrived at the diner, her hazel eyes bright with hope, her scarf fluttering in the autumn breeze as she pushed Lily's stroller inside. She'd spent the day at the animal shelter, walking dogs and cleaning kennels, her heart tethered to the blurry photo of Scout from the previous night, his blue eyes catching the diner's light. The diner hummed with volunteers, their coffee, cups steaming as they swapped stories of sightings, their voices a soft buzz of excitement. Clara called Sarah to the back, her voice low as she pointed to the alley where Scout had appeared, his tail wagging hesitantly, and Sarah's pulse quickened, her fingers brushing Lily's blanket as she stepped outside. The alley was dim, its walls streaked with graffiti, but Clara's plate of chicken sat like an offering, its warmth cutting through the evening chill. Scout lingered in the shadows, his black and white coat blending with the twilight, his blue eyes glowing faintly as he sniffed the air, the scent of chicken pulling him closer. His limp had eased, perhaps from Clara's regular scraps, or the spark of trust flickering in his wary heart, and his paws moved silently on the pavement, his instincts torn between caution and the pull of kindness. Clara knelt a few feet away, her voice a gentle murmur calling his name, and Scout paused, his body tense but his tail giving a slow wag. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as she recognized the dog who'd saved Lily, his scruffy form unmistakable, even in the dim light. She knelt beside Clara, her voice trembling with gratitude as she thanked Scout, her words spilling out raw and heartfelt, a quiet vow to give him the home he deserved. Scout's ears twitched, his gaze flicking between the women, his trust wavering, but held by their steady presence. Clara extended a hand, her fingers brushing his matted fur, a fleeting touch that felt like a promise, and Scout didn't flinch, his body relaxing as he lowered his nose to the chicken, his tail wagging more freely. Sarah's tears fell, her heart swelling at the sight of Scout's tentative trust, his blue eyes meeting hers for a moment that stopped time. Mark, the journalist, arrived, drawn by a volunteer's tip, his notebook forgotten as he watched the scene unfold, his cynicism melting into awe. He pulled out his phone, snapping a photo that captured Scout's cautious acceptance, the diner's light casting a warm glow over his fur, and posted it online with a caption that spread like wildfire. Hero dog found. The diner buzzed as news spread, volunteers crowding the back door, their cheers soft to avoid startling Scout, their faces alight with relief. Clara stood, her hands on her hips, her laugh like a bell as she described Scout's slow approach, his spirit unbroken despite his years of solitude. Sarah looked at Lily, sleeping in her stroller, and felt a completeness she hadn't known, before her gratitude for Scout a fire that warmed the evening air. The city's streets seemed to hum with joy, the news of Scout's discovery rippling through Willowbrook like a gentle tide, binding neighbors in a shared victory. Social media exploded with the photo, comments pouring in from strangers who'd followed Scout's story, their words a chorus of celebration. A group of kids nearby taped new posters to lampposts, their crayon drawings now showing Scout with a wagging tail, a hero welcomed home. Clara's diner became a hub of plans, regulars proposing a festival to honor Scout, their ideas sparking like fireflies, a pet parade, a fundraiser for the shelter, a community picnic under the autumn stars. Sarah nodded, her heart swelling, at the thought of Scout joining her and Lily, their small apartment a haven for the dog who'd saved them. Mark's latest article took shape, his words painting Scout as a symbol of hope that had united a city, his usual sharp edges softened by the sight of the stray's trust. The alley remained quiet, its shadows softer now as if Scout's presence had warmed its corners. He ate the chicken, his body at ease for the first time in years, his blue eyes bright against the dusk. Sarah's shelter work flashed through, her mind, the strays she'd cared for each a reminder of Scout's resilience, and she felt a quiet certainty that this moment was a turning point, a promise that Scout would never be alone again. Clara suggested Sarah adopt Scout, but offered to co-care for him at the diner, ensuring he'd always have a place where the city's love could reach him. The volunteers lingered, their coffee cups forgotten as they watched Scout, their voices a soft hum of gratitude. Willowbrook's skyline glowed, its lights a constellation of lives touched by a stray's courage, and Sarah felt the weight of the city's hope settle into her bones, a vow to make Scout's new chapter as bright as his selfless act. The diner's jukebox played a soft tune, its notes blending with the rustle of leaves outside, and Scout stretched on the pavement, his limp barely noticeable, his heart learning to trust the warmth of human kindness. Willowbrook glowed with a quiet joy as the news of Scout's discovery spread, the city's heart lifted by the image of the scruffy dog finally safe at Clara's diner, where the scent of warm biscuits and fresh coffee mingled with the hum of celebration. Sarah Mitchell stood in the diner's soft light, her hazel eyes never leaving Scout, who lay on a blanket Clara had spread near the counter, his black and white coat still matted, but his body relaxed for the first time in years. Lily gurgled in her stroller, her tiny hand waving as if sensing the shift in the air, and Sarah knelt beside Scout, her fingers gently stroking his head, her gratitude a silent vow to give him the home he deserved. Clara bustled behind the counter, her graying curls bouncing as she poured coffee for volunteers, their voices a soft buzz of excitement as they swapped stories of the search. She suggested Sarah adopt Scout, but offered to co-care for him at the diner, ensuring he'd always have a place where Willowbrook's love could reach him, her laugh like a bell as she imagined Scout greeting patrons with a wagging tail. Sarah nodded, her heart swelling at the thought of Scout joining her and Lily, their small apartment now a haven for the dog who'd saved them. The diner became a hub of plans, regulars proposing a Scout Day festival to honor him, their ideas sparking, like fireflies, a pet parade, a fundraiser for the shelter, a community picnic under the autumn stars. Mark, the journalist, sat at a booth, his laptop open but his gaze distant, his latest article capturing the moment Scout trusted Clara and Sarah, his words painting the stray as a symbol of hope that had united a city. Social media exploded, with photos of Scout at the diner, his blue eyes bright against the blanket, and messages poured in from around the world, offering treats, toys, and love for Willowbrook's hero. Scout stirred, his nose twitching at the scent of Clara's biscuits, his limp barely noticeable as he stretched, his body at ease in the warmth of human kindness. Flashbacks of abandonment faded, replaced by new memories of Sarah's gentle touch and Clara's steady presence, his heart learning to trust again. The festival came together quickly, with kids painting banners and shopkeepers donating food, the park transforming into a sea of color and laughter. Sarah pushed Lily's stroller through the crowd, Scout trotting beside her on a leash, his tail wagging as children ran up to pet him, their giggles a melody that soothed his old wounds. Clara emceed the event, her voice booming with pride as she shared Scout's story, raising thousands for the shelter where Sarah still volunteered. Mark watched from the sidelines, his notebook filled with quotes from neighbors who saw Scout, as a reminder to look out for each other, their words echoing the city's newfound warmth. Willowbrook streets felt different now, their usual rush softened by smiles and small acts of kindness, inspired by a stray who'd shown them what courage could do. Sarah felt a completeness she hadn't known before, her life intertwined. With a dog who'd given her more than she could ever repay, her evenings now spent answering letters from strangers who saw Scout's video and felt moved to act. The shelter saw a surge in adoptions, families leaving with wagging dogs and purring cats, their choices a ripple of Scout's legacy. Clara's diner remained a gathering place, its walls lined with photos from Scout Day, where Scout trotted, proudly beside Sarah and Lily, his tail high like a flag of victory. She started a weekly pet adoption event, her grey curls bouncing as she matched dogs with families, her laughter a beacon that drew the community closer. Mark's articles had found a new voice, his latest piece a reflection on Willowbrook's transformation, printed beside a photo of Scout resting by Lily's stroller. The city unveiled a small bronze statue of Scout on Broad Avenue during a quiet ceremony, its plaque reading, "For the stray who showed us love," a simple tribute that drew smiles from passers-by. Sarah stood by the statue one evening, Lily on her hip and Scout at her side, his nose sniffing the cool air as if sensing the city's gratitude. The festival's lights twinkled as dusk fell, casting a glow over the park, and Scout played with Lily in the grass, his barks light and joyful, his blue eyes bright with a trust that had grown from Clara's scraps and Sarah's vow. The city's skyline glowed, its lights a constellation of lives touched by compassion, and Sarah thought of the letters, the festival, the countless stories sparked by one selfless act, her heart knitting together the pieces of her old fears with the strength she'd found through Scout's example. Volunteers lingered at the diner, their coffee cups forgotten as they watched Scout nap by the jukebox, their voices a soft hum of gratitude. Clara leaned on the counter, her eyes soft as she watched Scout, her diner now more than a business, a home for the community Scout had sparked. Sarah's shelter work continued, her hands gentle as she cared for strays, each one a reminder of the dog who'd saved her daughter and given her purpose. The hashtag Willowbrook Miracle still trended, with posts about global initiatives, pet rescues, kindness campaigns, all tracing back to Scout's dash through traffic. Willowbrook moved forward, its people bound by a story that urged them to see the beauty in the overlooked, to cherish the courage of a stray who'd taught them the boundless power of love. Sarah adjusted Lily's blanket, her fingers brushing the soft fabric, and felt a quiet certainty that Scout's legacy would endure, a lesson to seek the good in every corner of the city's restless heart. Willowbrook settled into a gentle rhythm as the autumn leaves faded into a soft golden dusk, its streets carrying a warmth that lingered like the last rays of the setting sun, forever changed by the story of Scout, the stray who'd woven a city, together with one selfless act. Sarah Mitchell sat on her apartment floor, Lily nestled in her lap, giggling as Scout nudged a soft toy ball across the rug, his black and white coat now glossy from regular baths, and Clara's steady supply of treats. The room was quiet, save for the hum of the city outside, its once chaotic pulse now a comforting rhythm that carried the weight of a story fully told. Sarah held a stack of letters from strangers across the globe, their words inked with gratitude for Scout's heroism, each one a testament to the dog who'd reminded them to look for kindness in unexpected places. She read one aloud, her voice steady as she shared a child's drawing of a scruffy dog with blue eyes, sent from a school in a distant country, and Scout's ears twitched, his head tilting as if he understood. The city had transformed since that frantic moment on Broad Avenue, its streets softer now with neighbors who waved, shopkeepers who left water bowls for strays, and a sense of community that felt like a gift. Clara's diner remained the heart of it all, its walls lined with photos from Scout Day, where Scout had trotted proudly beside Sarah and Lily, his tail high like a flag of victory. Clara had expanded her weekly pet adoption events, her graying curls bouncing as she matched dogs with families, her laughter a beacon that drew Willowbrook closer, her diner a haven where stories of small acts inspired by Scout, a meal shared, a stray fed, were swapped over steaming coffee. Mark, the journalist, sat at his usual booth, his laptop open but his gaze distant, reflecting on his own transformation from a skeptic chasing headlines to a writer celebrating Willowbrook's unsung heroes, the shelter workers, the kids who drew Scout's posters, the volunteers who searched alleys. His latest piece, printed beside a photo of Scout resting by Lily's stroller, explored the city's shift, its words inspiring readers to seek their own heroes in the margins, his once sharp edges softened by a belief in the good hiding in plain sight. The animal shelter thrived, its kennels emptier as Scout's story fueled a wave of adoptions, families leaving with wagging dogs and purring cats, their choices a ripple of his legacy that stretched beyond Willowbrook's borders. Sarah volunteered there still, her hands gentle as she cared for strays, each one a reminder of the dog who'd saved her daughter and given her purpose. Her evenings spent answering letters from people who saw Scout's video and felt moved to act, their words a reminder that his impact reached global corners. Scout himself seemed lighter, his limp gone, his fur gleaming as he bounded after a ball in the park, his barks echoing with a joy that matched Lily's giggles, their bond a dance of trust and love. The city's bronze statue of Scout on Broad Avenue stood as a quiet tribute, its plaque reading "For the stray who showed us love," drawing smiles from passers-by who paused to touch its surface, their fingers tracing the curve of his tail. Sarah stood by the statue one evening, Lily on her hip, Scout at her side, his nose sniffing the cool air as if sensing the city's gratitude, her thoughts drifting to the festival, the letters, the countless lives touched by one selfless dash through traffic. Clara joined them, her laughter warm as she tossed a treat to Scout, the three of them sitting on a park bench sharing stories of how the dog had changed them. Sarah's newfound strength, Clara's diner as a community heart, the city's softer rhythm. Willowbrook's skyline glowed under the dusk, its lights a constellation of lives woven together by compassion, and Sarah felt a profound peace, knowing Scout's legacy was etched into the city's soul. The shelter saw new volunteers inspired by Scout's story, their hands busy with leashes and bowls, their voices bright with hope for every stray. Online, the hashtag Willowbrook Miracle still trended, with posts about global initiatives, pet rescues in small towns, kindness campaigns in bustling cities, all tracing back to Scout's courage. Sarah read these updates, her heart knitting together the pieces of her old fears with the strength she'd found through Scout's example, her life fuller now, split between mothering Lily, volunteering, and visiting Clara's diner, where Scout often stayed, greeting patrons with a wag of his tail. The city's streets felt alive with small acts, a vendor sharing food with a homeless man, a teen helping an elder cross Broad Avenue, each one a thread in the tapestry Scout had begun. Mark's articles continued, his voice now a steady call, to notice the overlooked, his cynicism replaced by a quiet faith in the power of single acts to heal a weary world. Scout played with Lily in the park, his blue eyes bright, his barks a melody that carried across the grass, and Sarah watched them, her chest warm with a completeness that anchored her in Willowbrook's glow. The diner's jukebox played a soft tune, its notes blending with the rustle of leaves, and Clara leaned on the counter, her eyes soft as she watched Scout nap by the jukebox, her diner a home for the community he'd sparked. The city moved forward, its people bound by a story that urged them to cherish the courage of a stray who'd taught them the boundless power of love, its streets a canvas for kindness that would endure long after the autumn dusk faded. Sarah whispered a thank you to Scout, her words carrying the weight of a city forever changed, her heart certain that his legacy would live in every smile, every act, every life touched by the stray who'd shown Willowbrook its heart.